In the dead of night, the forest was silent, shattered only by the thunder of hooves and the terrified screams of men. Suddenly, the King of France, his eyes wild with terror, drew his sword and began to attack his own guards. He shrieked of hidden enemies, of traitors in the shadows, of a kingdom plotting against him. His blade flashed in the moonlight as he thrashed like a cornered animal, until at last his men managed to subdue him. Panting, his mind a whirlwind of chaos, the king looked at their horrified faces and asked a question that would chill the bravest soul to the bone. Who am I? This was the beginning of a descent into madness. So deep, so horrifying that it would bring one of Europe's mightiest kingdoms to the very brink of ruin. This is the story of Charles VI of France, the mad king who believed his body was made of fragile glass, who forgot his own name, and who insisted on dining with the dead. Charles inherited the throne in 1380 at the tender age of 11. In his youth, he was known as Charles the Beloved. He was tall, handsome, intelligent, and seemed destined for greatness. After his powerful uncles guided his early years, he came of age and ruled with a firm and decisive hand. For 12 years, France prospered. He married the beautiful German princess, Isabella of Bavaria, and they had a family. The kingdom was at peace, the future bright. But beneath this glittering surface, shadows were gathering, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment arrived in the summer of 1392. Charles was leading an army into Brittany to punish a man who had dared to assassinate one of his trusted advisors. The journey through the forest of Le Mans was oppressive, the air thick and heavy under a scorching sun. Suddenly, a strange, disheveled man in rags darted from the trees, grabbing the king's horse. He shouted a frantic warning. "Go no further. Noble king, you are betrayed. Turn back before it is too late." The guards pushed the man aside, but his chilling words lingered. An unsettling silence fell over the procession. A few moments later, a page, drowsy from the heat, accidentally dropped the king's lance. The sharp, metallic clang of steel, striking a soldier's helmet, shattered something deep within Charles's mind. In an instant, he was no longer a king, but a man consumed by paranoia. He drew his sword, spurred his horse into a frenzy, and began to attack everyone around him. In his delusion, friends became foes. 4 of his own men lay dead before the royal guards could finally restrain their king. He was carried to a nearby castle, where he lay unconscious for 2 days. When awoke, he seemed normal again, though confused and frightened by the terror he saw in the eyes of those around him. The royal doctors assured the kingdom that he had merely suffered from the heat and the stress of the campaign. They were catastrophically wrong. This was not a fleeting illness. It was the start of a lifelong nightmare. Over the following months, Charles's behavior grew more and more erratic. He would wake in the middle of the night, screaming that assassins were hiding in his chambers. He would run through the grand palace corridors, howling like a wolf. He refused to bathe or change his clothes for months on end, convinced that even a drop of water could harm him. But his most infamous delusion was the belief that his body was made entirely of glass. He would stand frozen for hours, terrified that the slightest touch or sudden movement would cause him to shatter into a million pieces. To protect him from this imaginary fate, his servants were ordered to sew iron rods into his garments, creating a sort of internal armor. He wore these heavy, reinforced outfits, even in the sweltering heat of summer, trembling at the thought of breaking apart. During his brief periods of lucidity, Charles was a capable ruler. He would conduct royal business, lead military campaigns, and seem every bit the king he once was. But these moments of clarity grew shorter and rarer as his madness deepened, pulling him further into the abyss. And then, the most shocking phase of his illness began. Charles started demanding that the corpses of deceased nobles be brought to the royal dining hall. They were dressed in their finest clothes and propped up in chairs around the table, as if they were still alive. The king would then sit down for dinner and carry on conversations with them. He nodded at their silent responses and laughed at jokes only he could hear, while the servants recoiled in horror at the grotesque sight and the overwhelming stench of decay. But they were powerless. To defy the king, even a mad king, was treason. Even Queen Isabella, who was at first devoted to her husband, began to withdraw as his terrifying episodes worsened. She eventually started taking lovers openly, knowing that during his fits of madness, Charles often didn't even recognize her or their own children. As the king descended further into his private hell, the kingdom of France began to fracture. Two powerful factions, the Armagnacs and the Burgundians, waged a bloody struggle for control of the throne, tearing the country apart. France teetered on the edge of a full-blown civil war, all while its king oscillated between sanity and delusion, one day signing treaties, the next day dining among corpses. In 1415, England saw its chance. King Henry V led a small, disciplined army into a divided and leaderless France. At the Battle of Agincourt, they faced a French force that was vastly superior in numbers, but crippled by infighting and a total lack of coordination. Reckless, arrogant charges by French knights were met with the deadly precision of English the battlefield turned into a muddy nightmare. Thousands of France's finest warriors were cut down by a storm of arrows, trampled by their own horses, or drowned in the mud, weighed down by their heavy armor. It was one of the most catastrophic defeats in French history, and through it all, King Charles sat in his palace. Some days, he was lucid enough to understand the disaster unfolding. On other days, he was lost in his Glass Delusion, or on Siagin feasting with the dead. That was a total blow. The Treaty of Troyes in 1420 cut Charles's own son, the Dauphin, out of the picture, and gave the crown of France to King Henry V of England. In his moments of clarity, Charles VI was forced to sign away his own kingdom, but fate had one last, strange twist. Just 2 years later, in 1422, Henry V died unexpectedly. King Charles died shortly after. This left the throne vacant, and the disinherited son, with the miraculous help of a young peasant girl named Joan of Arc, would eventually fight to reclaim his birthright. But the scars of decades of chaos, civil war, and invasion ran deep, and France would be slow to heal. So, what caused Charles's madness? To this day, historians and medical experts debate the cause. Some suggest he suffered from schizophrenia or another psychotic disorder. Others theorize he was slowly poisoned with lead or mercury, common metals at the time. It's also possible it was genetic. His mother's family had a history of mental illness. We may never know the true cause, but the consequences are undeniable. A nation plunged into civil war, a devastating foreign invasion, and thousands of deaths, all tied to one man's inability to rule. The story of Charles VI is more than just a tale of a mad king. It's a profound human tragedy. It's the story of a man who was likely aware, in his lucid moments, that his own mind was unraveling, yet was powerless to stop it. He was a king crushed by the weight of a crown and the fragility of his own sanity, in a time that had no understanding, no compassion, and no medicine to help him. The Mad King who dined with corpses is a chilling reminder of the fragility of power, the devastating human cost of mental illness, and the darkness that can emerge when authority and vulnerability collide. In 1422, Charles VI died, having spent more than half of his reign lost in the labyrinth of his own mind. His son would eventually restore the kingdom, but the memory of the king's glass delusions and his ghastly feasts would linger for centuries as a dark and cautionary tale. This is Obsidian Vale, where history's darkest truths come to light. What do you think truly caused Charles's descent into madness? Was it a mental illness, a slow poisoning, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that uncover the shocking truths behind history's wildest events. Thanks for watching.